There is somebody
Aaron
here.
Tony.
There's Tony
Hi,
Smith. Hello, Tony. And Aaron. All right. Here we are. Live.
Live.
Good evening, nobody.
Nobody. That wasn't directed at you two, Aaron and Tony.
Yeah, I don't know. Wouldn't be sure about that.
I'd just forgotten to press enter. Then you suddenly appeared, Aaron and Tony.
Let me do a sound check on the intro.
You're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show.
The view from our side of the cockpit door.
Sounds good to me.
Too loud?
Nope, sounds good to me.
Okay.
Hi, Mike Kuipers.
Now, I have a question. Can you hear the fan that's keeping me cool?
Only when... start talking.
Hello, can you hear the fan that's keeping me cool?
I can hear it when you're talking. Do you have a gate?
No.
That's weird. I wonder if StreamYard's doing that.
Could be.
I didn't know they had
I'm going to
that.
turn it off for the show. I just wondered how loud it was.
It's like when you're not talking, we can't hear it. But when you're talking, I can hear it. Now that I'm listening for it. Yeah.
Hey, Donna Rose. Hi.
Hello, Donna. Hello, Mike Kuipers. Hello, Tony Smith. Hello, Aaron. We'll probably say this again when more people arrive and before we actually
But we're giving you
recording.
a preview here.
Yeah, we're giving you the tease. We're going to do a two-parter again because this young lady right here had see those stacks of papers that she's holding. She's got a lot of work to do at the office, and
she just went to the photocopier and dragged those out.
Oh yeah, it's probably. You know what? Now that I can look at it a little bit more closer,
yeah, there's nothing.
They're all the same thing. Sure, Steph. Sure, you have
And she
work
had
to
hours of dictation to do.
Anyway, so she's not going to join us
Plus
today.
the
She
pen.
couldn't, but she is. She can tomorrow. So what we're planning on is to do approximately 2 hours worth today.
And Nick
And then-
Camacho will be joining us in about
Yes.
an hour.
Nick C. will be joining us, as Liz said, a little bit later in progress. And then we'll do a shorter part two tomorrow.
With
And,
Steph and maybe Nick C. and maybe Nick A. might drop in at some point.
Who knows? Depends on when we
And we
record,
were
I guess.
hoping Rick would drop in, but
Well, you know, we were discussing when we were going to do the show last week, and was either going to be Thursday or Friday. Turns out we're going to do both. But when he learned that, I sound a little bit too loud. Okay, Aaron, I'll knock it down a notch.
yeah, Thursday was out for Rick, if I recall. He could not do Thursday.
Yeah, he could not do Thursday. So when we decided we would do Thursday, because when we found out he couldn't do Thursday, we thought that's the day. No.
Perfect.
Just kidding. When we found out that
Gets so much done.
when he found out that we were going to do Thursday, he decided that he'd just leave all his audio podcasting gear at home. So he should know better that you always bring, because you never know when we're going to do things. So, always take it with you. So he doesn't have it. Yep.
Question: can I replace last week's show title with this week's? Or you do what I mean? 331 with 332, because according to this, 531 is there, which is out of date.
Are you're in Evernote?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I didn't update that. Sorry, I'm having
Oh,
trouble getting.
that's not where you take it from then.
What are we talking about?
The title art. Oh.
Oh,
You don't take it from Evernote, do you? You must have it somewhere else.
I have it in the, yeah, I'm sorry. Where? Oh, okay.
I just
Yeah.
updated it.
Oh,
Okay.
sorry, I just realised that I'm asking you to update something you're not going to use.
So it's in the slides.
That's okay then.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, gents, are we getting close to going? Or what?
I think so. Yeah, so that is the deal. We're going to do a two-parter, longer version today and shorter tomorrow. And let me do this since she is going to be tomorrow. Let me remove this so I don't accidentally introduce her. we go. Okay. I have my recording.
Excellent.
I have my recorder not recording.
Okay.
Hi, Tim Van Ram. Why did it take you a few minutes?
He's getting a
Getting
bit
into-
slow in his old age.
Aren't
Everything
we
is
all?
taking longer for Tim now.
Aren't we all?
Yeah.
So, Aaron, do I still sound too loud? I mean, I did lower the gain a little bit.
Sound good to me.
So the issue last time was that I wasn't loud enough, and I figured it out after we did our recording last week what I was doing wrong. It was operator error.
Good work, Jeff.
Yeah. It's too complicated for me to explain, but it was my fault.
You figured it out.
I figured it out.
Okie dokie. Let's hit it.
Something has changed in the way the show displays on your end. Ooh, what end?
See,
Well, that's the
project-
problem. You're not supposed to be displaying the show on your
On
end.
your end.
That's not a good way to watch it.
I'm visualizing a projector, and oh no, I don't want to go there.
Too late.
I could do some title art for that.
No, let's not. Okay.
Innuendo?
Current
Oh,
show.
yes. On your endo.
Okay. Where is Evernote? Here it is. Boom. Okay. Let's do it if you're ready, Liz.
I'm ready.
All right, here we go.
You're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show.
The view from our side of the cockpit door.
WAPG, it's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Airline Pilot Guy, episode 533.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Hello, you're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show, the view from our side of the cockpit door. With your host, Captain Jeff, broadcasting live from Studio 1A at former APG headquarters in Roswell, Georgia. Today's show is recorded on the 18th of August, 2022.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy. It's your ride and he's flying by. With the Airline Pilot Guy.
In today's episode, a Southwest flight attendant suffers a back injury during a firm landing. The final report on why a Ryanair Boeing 737 lost cabin pressure heading towards Frankfurt. More news and your feedback. So get all settled in. Tray tables and seat backs in the upright and locked positions. Electronic devices powered on. I'm Radio Roger, and Flight 533 is ready for pushback.
Thank you, Radio Roger. He is an award-winning TV and radio reporter currently at the #1 all-news station in the nation, 1010 Wins in
New York City.
Welcome to the Airline Pilot Guy Show. It's an aviation podcast covering the latest in aviation news and answering your great feedback. I'm Captain Jeff, a pilot at a major legacy airline based in Atlanta. Hello?
Yes.
Hello.
That's weird. All of a sudden, my volume went down to nothing.
Well,
Can you still hear me
didn't
okay?
Change here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You sound fine.
Oh, that's weird. What the hey? Hello? Hello? Isn't that weird? Hello, testing. Okay. It's like somebody came up here and took the volume of my headphones and just went, "Meow."
Very odd.
But I don't
It's a
see
ghost.
anybody.
It's
How
a
did
here.
you get it back again, though?
I just kind of moved the knob around, the volume knob to be clear.
right
Yeah.
there on the air.
Move the knob around and it seemed to work out just fine.
Carry on.
Wow, that is weird. Okay. I'm Captain Jeff, a pilot at a major legacy airline based in Atlanta, GA. And joining me today from his studio,
in Hartford, Hereford, and Hampshire.
professional photographer, former RAF fighter pilot, retired Airbus A330, A340 captain for Virgin Atlantic Airways. It's Captain Nick.
Hi there, Jeff, and hi Liz. Great to be back on the show. Is this when I should press that button no pilot should ever push?
No, don't press that.
No.
Are you sure?
Only one every 10 shows, please.
And about 100.
100, yeah, that's better. All right. And also joining us from a place to stand and a place to grow, from her studio in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, retired financier and aviation enthusiast, spreadsheet master, and our producer-director, it's Liz Piper.
Hello, everyone. Back from the great North Woods. Here I am.
So happy that you're back with us, and you're going to be
I'm happy
talking to
be
me
back too.
in my ear and helping guide us through this podcasting journey. So,
Bye, everybody. See you later.
all right. Thanks, Liz. And we also should mention that we're expecting Nick Camacho to join us while the show is in progress. And this is going to be a two-parter. Steph will not be able to join us today, but she will be joining us tomorrow. So stay tuned for details of when we're recording the second.
And why isn't she joining us there, Jeff?
She's not joining us because she has a lot of work to do. If you're watching the video, yeah, that's Steph holding up, supposedly holding up these things that she has to dictate. And notes and stuff like that she has to do. So I'm not sure we're really buying it, but that's the story that she's given us.
In reality, she should be holding up a bottle of beer because that's what she's really
That's
doing.
probably really what she's doing, yes. Anyway, so we'll miss her today, but we're going to have her here tomorrow. So, again, stay tuned. Now, if you're listening to the audio-only podcast, you know what? None of this makes any sense at all. She's here, but she's just going to join us a little bit late. There you go. All right. Without further ado, let's move on to the news.
Stand by for news.
Are you okay, Liz?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
I just did that swipey thing.
You know what? I should probably. Are you hearing me through my phone and through the?
Yes, I am.
Okay, let me see if I can figure out how to mute myself, so you don't have to hear it in both places.
And I can still hear Liz, which
That's
I can't
better.
normally.
Oh, really?
Oh, that's
Oh.
not better.
She needs to.
Tone it down.
No,
No,
you have to stop speaking.
I think that it's because maybe here. Let me go over here to. I don't even. Oh, there you are. So you've muted. Okay, now you've muted yourself. Now say something, Liz, and see if Nick
Say
can
something,
hear you.
Liz.
Can you hear Liz now?
Yes, I can still hear.
Well, how is it that you can hear her?
Oh, and Tim Van Ram's hearing me too.
Oh, you know what? I know what it is.
Good thing I've been a good girl.
Yeah, I'm glad that we figured out that everybody could still hear you.
Yeah, me too.
Let's see. We're going to go here to routing and the sub out
I'm
routing.
going to have another beer while the.
I know what it is. It's an easy fix. Now, okay,
Push
now
that button yet?
now Liz, say something. Oh, that's rude. You didn't hear that, did you, Nick?
No.
She
Probably
really
a
didn't
good
say.
job.
She didn't say anything
So I
rude.
can still hold Liz in high esteem.
Yes, you can. You may. It would be a mistake, she said. Okay, now it's just me who can hear Nick, Liz. I don't know what I'm saying anymore. We're at the news. Okay. I'm trying. Just ask anybody that knows me.
Very trying.
All right, let's start off with this in our news notebook. Preliminary report, missing pilot en route to Raleigh-Durham International. This is the National Transportation Safety Board Aviation Accident Preliminary Report. On July 29, 2022, about 14:04 Eastern Daylight Time, a CASA 212-200 November 497CA was substantially damaged when it was involved in an accident near Rayford, North Carolina. The pilot in command was not injured. The second in command sustained fatal injuries during the subsequent diversion to the Raleigh-Durham International Airport, RDU, in Durham, North Carolina. The airplane was operated as a Title 14 Code of Federal Regulations Part 91 skydiving flight. The pilot in command reported that they flew 2 skydiving runs, then descended to the Rayford West Airport, November Romeo 20, Rayford, North Carolina, to pick up a third group of skydivers. The second in command was flying the approach to November Romeo 20 and was on heading altitude and airspeed until the airplane descended below the tree line and dropped. Both pilots called for a go-around maneuver, which the second in command initiated. However, before the SIC could arrest the airplane's sink rate and initiate a climb, the right main landing gear impacted the runway surface. The pilot in command assumed the flight controls upon the airplane reaching 400 feet AGL, above ground level, then flew a low approach over November Romeo 20 to have airfield personnel verify the damage. The personnel subsequently called the pilot in command to let him know that they had recovered the fractured right main landing gear on the runway. The pilot in command directed the second in command to declare an emergency and request a diversion to Raleigh-Durham for landing. While en route to RDU, the crew coordinated with air traffic control operations and their customer and planned their approach and landing at RDU with the SIC, the second in command, responsible for communicating with air traffic control while the pilot in command flew the airplane. The pilot in command reported that there was moderate turbulence during the flight, and then about 20 minutes into the diversion to Raleigh-Durham, after conducting approach and emergency briefings, the second in command became visibly upset about the hard landing. Review of preliminary air traffic control radio communication information from the FAA indicated that the SIC had been communicating with air traffic control up to that point in the flight. In his final transmission, the second in command acknowledged a course heading from air traffic control. The pilot in command described that about this time, the second in command opened his side cockpit window and, quote, may have gotten sick. The pilot in command took over radio communications, and the second in command lowered the ramp in the back of the airplane, indicating that he felt like he was going to be sick and he needed air. The pilot in command stated that the second in command then got up from his seat, removed his headset, apologized, and departed the airplane via the aft ramp door. The pilot in command stated that there was a bar one could grab about 6 feet above the ramp. However, he did not witness the second in command grab the bar before exiting the airplane. The pilot in command then turned the airplane to the right to search for the second in command, and a radio transmission to air traffic control about 1.5 minutes after the second in command's radio acknowledgement of the course heading, the pilot in command notified air traffic control that his co-pilot had departed the airplane without a parachute. The PIC proceeded on course to Raleigh-Durham, where he performed a low approach and then emergency landing. Upon landing, the airplane departed the right side of the runway and came to a rest upright in the grass. Post-accident examination of the airplane revealed substantial damage to the right main landing gear fittings, and the airframe structure where the fittings attach. The airplane was retained for further examination. So that is the preliminary report, which we'll have in our show notes. It is very sad. It's, again, we talked about it on the previous episode where, I guess the last couple of episodes, where we thought, that can't be what happened. He must have accidentally fallen out of the airplane. But no, it's looking more and more now like he decided that was the best course of action, which, of course, is really sad because that is not the way to handle the situation. It's not the end of the world.
No, there's very little you can do in the way of making mistakes in an airplane that's going to end your flying career right there and then. We've all done hard landings, and the gear might have already had a bit of damage, and it just gave up on that particular hard landing. So,
right,
and so he recognised that the approach wasn't going well because he, as well as the captain stated that they were going to do a go around. So, it wasn't like he was completely out of control when he made that approach. He may have had some time to think about it, and he might have felt that was the end for him. But it's only the end with that company. It's not like career's going to grind to a halt. But having said that, because there still is a little bit of doubt that he might have gone back there just to be sick out of the rear door.
True.
I would still like to have that, an open question, because I think to say it was suicide is still a stretch. We don't know what was in the guy's mind, and he may have just missed his handhold there.
That's true. Good point.
Yeah, but incredibly sad, and I just feel sorry for his family as well, who must be going through hell right now.
Oh, yeah. I can't imagine. Very young, a young man with his entire life ahead of him, and it's just a sad situation for sure.
It is, absolutely.
All right. Another preliminary report, or is this? No, a final report from the NTSB, National Transportation Safety Board. This is from Aviation Herald by Simon. A Southwest Airlines Boeing 737-700 registration November 480 Whiskey November, performing flight 2029 from Oakland to Santa Ana, California, with 137 passengers and 5 crew, landed on Santa Ana's runway 20 right, when upon touchdown, a flight attendant immediately felt pain in her back and couldn't move. The aircraft rolled out without further incident. On August 6th, 2022, the NTSB released their final report, concluding the probable cause of the accident was a flight attendant received a serious injury during landing. A flight attendant was injured when the flight 2029 landed at John Wayne, Orange County Airport, Santa Ana, California. According to the flight crew, they were flying a visual approach to runway 20 right at Santa Ana. They were aiming for the touchdown zone due to its short runway and trying to fly the aircraft onto the runway with minimal floating. However, it ended up being a firm landing. Shortly after exiting the runway, the flight crew were informed that the B-position flight attendant, seated in the aft jump seat, had injured her back on landing and required medical assistance. According to the flight attendant, after securing the galley and cabin for landing, she sat down in her jump seat, secured her seatbelt harness, got into the brace position. She indicated that the plane hit the ground with such force that she thought that the plane had crashed. She immediately felt pain in her back, neck, and she could not move. Paramedics evaluated her and transported her to a local hospital, where she was later diagnosed with a compression fracture to her T3 vertebrae. That is serious. Doesn't have any, in our report, even the final report that I could see, there was nothing that talked about the actual G-forces, like how firm is firm on the landing.
No, I thought that was a bit disappointing, because it's the only way we can judge, really, to the accuracy of the indication that it was a hard landing. The crew obviously didn't think it was, the pilots, I'm talking now, didn't think it was that hard, because they didn't call it a hard landing. And of course, there was only one person on the airplane that was injured. I don't know how many were there. Were there any passengers? Yeah, 141.
Yes.
So 141 other people didn't get injured. So and there's no indications of overhead lockers bursting open or oxygen masks falling down that would occur with a really hard landing. So,
like my landings are pretty much.
Yeah. Well, there are plenty of people who've done it. The back is a vulnerable thing, though, and I know, because I've had back problems for many years. And sometimes the most benign movement can cause you an awful lot of injury, but to actually have a compression fracture, I don't know. I wonder if they were able to establish when that fracture occurred. That's my only other question in my mind. So I have absolutely no doubt that she will be well compensated for this injury. But there are just a few questions in my mind.
Yeah, I agree. Many good points made there, Nick. The other thing I'm wondering about in the narrative on the final report here, it said that she secured the galley, went back to her jump seat in the aft of the aircraft, and assumed the brace position. I'm thinking, well, why would you assume the brace position? That's something you do when you are preparing for a crash landing.
I think if you're in a rearward facing seat, I don't know, is it rearward facing or forward facing?
It's forward facing.
Yeah,
On
okay.
that.
And in that case, I was going to say a rearward facing seat, a normal bolt upright sitting position would be appropriate for a sort of bracing position. But
Yeah.
the sort of brace position we imagine, it might be briefed slightly differently for them. I'm not sure.
Now, again, I have to say, maybe there is a seat. Maybe she's not in the. It talked about her being securing the galley and cabin for landing. She sat down in her jump seat, secured. I don't know why, but I thought she was in the back. But no, it says in the aft jump seat. Okay, in the paragraph above. So it was the aft back. So I'm pretty sure if you're a 737 person out there, and I'm wrong about that, make sure you correct us. But I think it's a forward-facing jump
And also,
seat.
is there a particular landing position that the cabin crew adopt, which would be the equivalent of a brace position?
I don't know.
That the passengers might adopt, or is it slightly different for you guys? That would be a question I would love to know the answer.
Yeah, I would like to know that as well. And I can say that, and I've never flown into John Wayne in an airliner at the controls. I've done it in this. Well, I've done it in the simulator, but I've witnessed a few landings at John Wayne in the jump seat of a 757. It definitely is it's a very challenging airport because it has very short runways. And, so, it's one of those things where sometimes they may even make an announcement public announcement to, or a public address, PA, to kind of make sure that everybody knows that it's a shorter runway than normal, and it's going to be most likely a firmer touchdown than that they're used to. And you really have to, slam the brakes on to try to, get the thing stopped as quickly as possible. So maybe, when hearing that, maybe the flight attendants are briefed that since it could be a firm landing, assume a brace position. I don't know. I'm not sure. It's just a possibility, I guess. But
Yeah. And Steph will be able to provide all the assistance you'll need.
yeah, definitely a new client for Steph.
Yeah,
She's
of course. I'm very unhappy for the cabin crew because she said she couldn't move, and paramedics had to take her to hospital, and that's a nasty, injury. So hope she gets better soon.
A nasty burp as well.
By the way, if a 7.5 can get in there okay, presumably it would be pretty easy for a 7.3. I mean, 7.5's got to have is heavier, bigger, got to have a larger landing distance.
But it has really, really good short field performance.
Does
I'm
it?
not sure how it compares
Got a
with
hook on the back or something?
So, a couple of them, I think. It's got great brakes. It's very impressive.
Right.
Very
cool.
Let's see. That means that I can play this if I can find it.
We're going green.
No.
Very impressive.
There we
lovely.
go. Just took me a long time to find that. Sorry. Okay. Continuing on. Captain Nick, you kind of sent this news item in for us, and it's entitled. Oh, I'm sorry. I skipped. I did my normal thing by clicking in preparation for the next one, and then going on to the following one. Okay, let's move on to the next item in our notebook here. Final report. Another final report. Not from the National Transportation Safety Board this time. It is from the BFA, And let's see, accident. Ryanair Boeing 737-800 near Frankfurt on July 13, 2018. They had a loss of cabin pressure, 33 passengers feeling unwell. The registration on this 737-800 was Echo India, Echo November Mike, performing flight 7312 from Dublin, Ireland to Zadar, Croatia. I've never even heard of that place. No. With 190 passengers and 6 crew, was en route at flight level 370, about 120 nautical miles southwest of Frankfurt, Hahn, Germany, still in French airspace when the crew initiated an emergency descent to flight level 080, approximately 8,000 feet. The passenger oxygen masks were released. The crew reported a number of passengers felt unwell with ear pain and nausea. A few passengers were bleeding out of their ears. Ugh. The aircraft landed safely on Frankfurt Hahn's runway 3 about 35 minutes after leaving flight level 370. Germany's police reported that the passengers there had heard a bang sound, not all too loud, and then the passenger oxygen masks came down, and the crew initiated a descent. The passengers complained about pain in their ears and nausea. 33 passengers were treated. Okay, we heard that. A passenger reported following a bang sound the release of the oxygen masks and the descent. Passengers were feeling unwell. Okay, again, another way to state that. Okay, yeah, Liz is showing the graph. We'll talk about that in a second. You just leave it up there, Liz. The airport reported several occupants on board the aircraft complained about health issues and were taken care of by doctors and paramedics. Several ambulances took passengers to hospitals. The airline reported an in-flight depressurization in line with standard operating procedures. The crew released the passenger oxygen masks and initiated a controlled descent. The aircraft landed safely. The passengers disembarked. A small number of passengers received medical attention as a precaution. Hotel accommodation was authorized. However, there was a shortage of hotel rooms available. The passengers are to be taken to Zadar by a replacement aircraft the following day. A replacement 737-800 came the following day, and they got there about 13 hours late. On January 18th, 2019, Germany's BFU reported in their July bulletin that the aircraft suffered a rapid loss of cabin pressure, causing minor injuries to 33. Again, restating. According to the flight data recorder, the outflow valve opened from 18 degrees to a fully open position at 104 degrees within 8 seconds. The cabin altitude was 7,925 feet initially, and 2 seconds later, the cabin altitude warning activated. The crew donned their oxygen masks and began working the memory items for cabin pressure loss. The master caution light activated. The crew observed the cabin altitude climbing at 4,000 feet per minute. The crew switched the outflow valve into manual control and commanded it to a closed position of 9.3 degrees when the cabin climbed through 14,830 feet 32 seconds after the outflow valve opened. That's an average rate of climb of 12,950 feet per minute. The crew initiated an emergency descent. During the descent, while still working the related checklist, the crew commanded the outflow valve to completely close. Descending through flight level 156, 15,600 feet, the first officer pilot monitoring observed the cabin altitude at 25,000 feet, and then later 24,000 feet. Okay, let me just say that again. So the airplane itself is below 16,000 feet. The first officer thought he saw the cabin altitude at 25,000 feet and later 24,000 feet. Okay. After leveling off at 9,000 feet, the captain handed controls to the first officer and found the cabin altitude indicating 33,000 feet and stated, "It's not working. We have to open the outflow valve completely to depressurize." The BFU mentioned that according to the flight data recorder, the cabin altitude at that time was 7,000 feet below mean sea level. So negative 7,000 feet MSL.
Yeah, so they've overpressurized the cabin.
Yeah, they had the valve was completely closed.
Yeah, and they're pumping air in and none's going out.
Just like a balloon. You know, you're pumping air into a balloon and it's,
The only thing that's stopping it from going pop is the safety relief valve.
Exactly.
Presumably.
Yep. the cabin pressure differential had reached the maximum of 8.72 psi for 4 minutes 20 seconds. After the outflow valve was opened, the cabin altitude settled at 5,000 feet. Now, I'm just realizing now I've avoided to do something accidentally that Nick Camacho wanted me to do while we were talking about this. So, apologize, Camacho, but I'm gonna do it now.
Oh yeah, Delta P.
Yeah, we're talking about Delta P here, the difference in
indeed.
pressure.
And it can be a little confusing, so it might be worth going through it bit by bit, try and work out what happened.
Right. Let's see. The normal PSI for, I think it's probably around 7 on this particular jet. I'm not sure exactly, Neil. But it's nowhere, 8.72 is the maximum PSI. And as Captain Nick just mentioned, at that point, if it gets to a pressure differential above that, then there are safety valves that go, the overpressure valves will open up. Because if you don't do that, just like a balloon, you keep blowing air into a balloon and eventually it's going to pop. You don't want the airplane fuselage to pop. Not a good thing. And let's see, on January 22nd, 2019, Germany's BFU released their interim report. Checks of the aircraft and outflow valve did not establish any evidence of a mechanical malfunction of the outflow valve. The cabin pressure controller, number 1, revealed a message, no auto fail. On August of 2022, August 10th, so just recently, the German BFU released their final report, concluding the probable cause of the occurrence was caused by a fully opened outflow valve commanded by the environmental control system during cruise at flight level 370. Okay, so one of the cabin altitude controllers they had some kind of a bad indication or sensing or something, and decided to open the outflow valve completely, and that's why all of a sudden the cabin altitude started climbing. The malfunction was caused by a single event upset in one of the cabin pressure controllers. Let's see, so it was CPC, cabin pressure controller number 2, had an incorrect calculation of the reference value of the outflow valve position, which caused the opening of the outflow valve and subsequent rapid decompression. Flight crew was forced to use their oxygen masks. They closed the outflow valve manually, and the cabin pressure began to increase. Subsequently, an emergency descent with still manually closed outflow valve was conducted. For several minutes, the cabin was pressurized with the maximum allowable differential pressure. After leveling off from the emergency descent, the flight crew opened the outflow valve completely, and a second rapid decompression occurred. The injuries the passengers suffered were most likely caused by the repressurization phase between the two decompressions. So on the chart there, you can see the first indication of the outflow valve opening up, and the
That's
cabin.
when it does that big jump, and the red line, which is cabin altitude. I'm sorry, the red line is the pressure, and the pale blue line is the cabin altitude.
Yes.
Where they nearly come together.
Yeah, they're going on the opposite, or they're coming actually toward each other.
Pressure's decreasing, which means cabin altitude is going up. It's increasing.
Right, and it's a pretty rapid, it's a very sharp drop. The outflow valve just went open.
And then it levels off, because presumably that's when they take manual control of the outflow valve and close it. And then they start to repressurize the airplane, and notice the top blue line is them going down the hill. So they're going down the hill at the same time they're repressurizing the airplane. But they repressurize it all the way down to minus 7,000 feet.
Yes.
So, and that's when the red line steadies out, because the safety valve is now stopping the airplane from being damaged by overpressurization.
Exactly.
And then I assume when that red line starts to plummet and the bottom blue line starts to climb, that is when they realize they need to open
Right.
some the outflow valves.
And they did it very rapidly. Again, not as rapidly as the cabin pressure controller that in error opened it up really quickly, but almost that fast.
And of course, it's going from a very high negative pressure to quite a low, very high positive pressure to quite a low negative pressure. And that, when it comes to your inner ear, is going to be a big pressure change, because pressure is felt greatest around at the atmosphere, around sea level. Up at high level, the changes in atmospheric pressure can feel less, but you get the worst down here around ground level, which is where they're messing about with it.
Yep.
So the big question is, Jeff, why did they do that?
Well, Captain Nick, and they kind of addressed this as well, and they said that one of the problems here was the mounting location and design of the digital selector panel of the digital cabin pressure control systems in the cockpit made it more difficult for the flight crew to correctly recognize the conditions of the cabin pressure, altitude, and monitor it. The location at the right overhead panel made it necessary for both pilots to actively focus their attention upward in order to monitor the relevant instruments. The BFUs of the opinion that in the situation caused by the rapid decompression, it is highly likely that instruments were not in the direct line of sight of the pilots, and they received less attention than the ones directly on the panel ahead of them. Partial condensation on the oxygen masks caused by the rapid decompression made visual verification of the cabin pressure altitude more challenging. Now we're showing in the video here the cabin pressure differential gauge and the cabin altitude gauge, and it's two instruments in concentric circles. The smaller of the two is the actual cabin altitude with a small needle, and then the big needle on the outer circumference is the actual delta P, the differential pressure. And I think that what they're surmising that, here in this next sentence here, it has to be assumed that the panel design with several combination of analog instruments. So there's a combination of digital instruments and analog instruments, and what we're looking at now are the analog, did not contribute positively to the situational awareness of the pilots. It has to be assessed as critical that the design of the cabin pressure altitude indication allows the needle to migrate into this scale from high altitudes. Aircraft are commonly not operated with cabin pressure altitudes below mean sea level, but the cabin pressure altitude indication should not allow any misinterpretation. So I think what they're trying to say, Captain Nick, and see if you agree, I think that because of the fact that they had closed the outflow valve and the airplane was under positive pressure, obviously the cabin altitude continued to decrease. And so on the scale, that smaller scale, that little needle gets up to 0. And then I think the way this is designed, the needle continued to move counterclockwise or anti-clockwise, and could be misinterpreted to mean that the cabin altitude now is in the high altitude levels. And that might be why both pilots thought they saw a cabin altitude of 25,000, 30,000, 35,000. That's the only thing that
certainly, I think that there's a good chance that they didn't realize that they'd overpressured the airplane because of that needle. But the next picture for me really is the gotcha. And there it is. Now there's your little needle indicating that the cabin is at 5,000 feet, but the big needle, which is actually indicating the pounds per square inch of pressure in the cabin, is reading on the yellow part of that gauge very close to the absolute maximum. But if you look, it's also registering against the inner scale, the cabin altitude scale. And if you looked at that through misty goggles, trying to work out what the hell is going on, and you've got a very odd indication there, because you'd normally never see those needles in those positions. That's where I think they made the mistake of thinking that the cabin altitude was up at 38,000 feet or 37,000 feet because they were misinterpreting that big needle for the cabin altitude indicator and not the pressure indicator that it was. And I think it's just a poor design of gauge from that point of view.
I agree.
And I point out, well, actually, it's not me. It's the inquiry points out that in the last 24 years, there have been 35 cases with pressure loss on board of transport aircraft. All of them have resulted, I presume they mean the 737s. I don't know if they haven't made that clear to me. All of them resulted in emergency descents. It was possible in one case only to re-establish cabin pressure. It has to be assumed that in the other 34 cases, the environmental control system redundancy had not been sufficient to prevent a rapid decompression. So it's just an indication to me that had they sort of assumed, okay, we've got a depressurization, let's go down, without perhaps trying to mess around with the outflow valves until they got themselves established at 10,000 feet and look, because that's safe. If you, as long as you've got outside pressure coming into the aircraft, 10,000 feet is fine, and then you can troubleshoot all with your oxygen masks off to your heart's content.
Right.
But trying to during the descent, trying to troubleshoot and fix the problem, I think was probably making their life just too hard, and which is why they might have misinterpreted these instruments and made a very clumsy attempt to repressurize the airplane. They're already in an emergency descent. Get that out of the way, and then take a look at what the problem is. That was, my main thought with this.
I agree. And I Haul Boxes in our live audience says, I've seen several crews wrongly manipulating the outflow valves in the sim, either applying reverse logic for closing or opening the outflow valves, or mistaking differential with cabin altitude. Yeah, it's not a good design. And even in an airplane such as MD-88, I had a situation where we were having some trouble with cabin pressurization. And it's really, really easy to kind of get a little confused or get things backwards with, okay, are we supposed to be closing or opening the, it's in while your ears are like doing crazy things and you're trying to keep the cabin altitude from, getting too high, and at the same time trying to drop the real airplane altitude to a lower level so that you can, equalize the pressures and be safe. As Nick mentioned, if you're at 10,000 feet or below, you're going to be fine. But it gets really, it's one of those things I think that most of us dread most, or one of the things that maybe not the most dreaded, but it's definitely on my list of high on the list of my personal things where I don't want to see it. I don't want to see a pressurization issue, because when you have to start manipulating the outflow, in fact, in my situation, we weren't too high. We were departing out of Atlanta, and there was some kind of an issue with the cabin pressure controller. We had to switch to manual mode. We have two auto controllers, and they both said, yeah, forget it, we're not doing it. We are now in manual mode, and I was the pilot flying. He was the pilot monitoring, and so he was trying to work the checklist and the outflow valve, and I could just tell that whatever he was doing was not working, was going wrong. And I finally had to give him the airplane, and I had to work the controller the manual outflow valve position to try to get everything under control. Then as we got below 10,000 feet or at 10,000 feet, I just opened the darn thing up and then thought, okay, now we don't have to mess with it anymore. We're just unpressurized. But it's very confusing. I guess that's my point. And then when you throw in an analog gauge with that kind of design, I'm sure that they were thinking, well, we don't have a lot of room in the panel to put all this instrumentation, so we're gonna be really clever and combine these two indications into one instrument. And it's been that way for, as I said, the 727. I think it was the same kind of gauge, probably the same exact gauge. Neil Lawrence says, yes, it's not as if even making the needles different colors would be difficult. So.
Yeah, I don't know, because I haven't actually seen 737 cockpits that often. But I wonder how much of this is legacy, early 737 technology that has been carried on through all the various modifications and various marks.
Yep.
Until we've actually got what should be a very modern and advanced aeroplane, the 800 series, but it's still got sort of hangovers from the old days, that they don't really want to try to modify because, as they did with MCAS, they don't want to have to retrain people to fly the latest version of the 737. But on the other hand, might be nice to start with a clean slate and redesign some parts of the aircraft so that it was more up to date.
Exactly. I think we could all agree with that. Okay.
I was trying to get IHall boxes to come up with the memory drill because he reckons he knows where it is.
3, without delay, descend to the lowest.
Oh, here we
safe
go. No,
altitude.
sorry, that's 1, I think.
Okay,
Announce
the
emergency descent. I can't see 2, but that's 3.
You just got to know it.
Yeah. All right. I think he's forgotten 2. Oh no.
Ah. Okay. I am taking a power cable here and repositioning
Where are you going to
it.
stick it, Jeff?
I'm going to stick it in this light to make sure that my light stays on because it was operating on battery. Okay. Yeah. So.
There you go. There's 2. Weren't we both pressing the button, Liz? So 1 was Don Oxymas, set regulators to 100%, establish crew communications without delay, descend to the lowest safe altitude or 10,000 feet, which is higher. Okay, well that doesn't involve any messing about with outflow valves, does it?
Nope.
So
Yeah,
I
that's-
think that was probably a good idea, just
Yeah.
to do that.
Absolutely.
And then sort it out when you're down
Sort
there.
it out when you, as you said, you can take the mask off and the goggles off and say, the old winding the watch or smoking the cigarette or whatever, whatever thing you want to say.
Apparently it does in the next step. We're getting these steps in slow time.
Oh, we're still, IHall boxes is still, frantically typing.
He's still scratching his head and working it out. All right, don't worry about it.
Okay. Okay, now we're going to go to this item that you added to our news notebook, and it has to do with chronic problems with flight training in the RAF. So I'm going to hand it over to you, sir. You have the con.
This is interesting because not only because we found about it before it came out in the newspapers. I don't know if you remember last show I mentioned that the 4 instructors who walked into a bar had gone back to their old training base 40 years after to have a few beers and look around. And we had a bit of a chat with
that was the joke, right? Was that the punchline?
That's it. Yeah. That's
4 instructors walk into a bar? No, wait.
Yep.
That's not even funny, Nick. Even with the rim shot. Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Nice rim shot, though. And we were chatting to some of the students who explained to us that they, these 4 guys are called holdies because they're on holding patterns because the training system has got some major delays. Anyway, I won't go into exactly what they said because I don't want them to feel like they've let the side down. But then the news broke and it came through on Sky News and later BBC saying that there has been acknowledged that there is a major problem with training RAF pilots at the moment, and that the training pipeline has got some huge problems and huge gaps, so that people are spending, well, it's not incorrect to say years waiting for the next stage in their training, or they're just put on hold almost semi-permanently. And that the group captain in charge of this aspect, has, well, this slightly different aspect at the moment. This on recruitment has resigned. Anyway, apparently the Air Chief Marshal in charge was told 2.5 years ago that this had to be a priority to fix the training system and get more pilots through to the front line, because the front line were dramatically short. And what is causing an additional problem is that you've got so many demands, operational demands now on the operational squadrons, Typhoons, and more importantly the F-35, and they are deployed now out in the sort of Eastern Europe area around Ukraine, that they can no longer man all the commitments they have, so they've had to drag flying instructors, OCU instructors, who should be training new pilots onto the F-35 away from their jobs, because they're the only qualified pilots to help man the aircraft. So as a result, they can't train new pilots to ease the workload and to provide more pilots to fly these aircraft, because the people who do that job are now doing an operational job on operational squadrons. And they say it's, the size of the Air Force has been so slashed so deeply in years past, decades of cost-saving cuts, which means that there just aren't the resources, there aren't the number of pilots available now to fill these. When you literally are starting to count pilots on the fingers of two hands, you don't have any spare capacity when all of a sudden there's an emergency. You need to move additional pilots out to fly operational aircraft, and yet so you can't continue the training system. The training system grinds to a halt. It's really quite a serious problem for the Royal Air Force, and until these operational commitments can slow down a bit and we can release those instructors back to their instructional job, it's only going to get worse. Because as pilots need relieving from their duties, operational duties, as they do, they cycle them through every now and again. You need to have people to replace them, and at the moment they don't seem to have that flexibility. It's really quite a serious problem.
I seem to recall we also had a story, and I'm not sure how long ago it was. It was probably more than a year ago, but I remember a story about the quality of the recruits coming in for training as pilots in the RAF, and they were having issues with kind of their attitudes about, what they would be required to do and what they were required to know.
I don't know how much of that is
that's not a factor.
True.
Okay.
The guys I met were all very well motivated, and they had been hanging around for ages and ages to get on to the next stage of training. And,
well, that's good to know.
Yes, it was. I was quite surprised, because I'm amazed they stuck it for so long, quite honestly, because, if you really want to get in and fly, and you're watching the years disappear whilst you're not getting into the cockpit you wonder, what am I doing here?
Right.
It's completely wasting my time. In addition, there is a rumor out there that they've are now trying to put quotas on who they recruit in the Air Force, and this is why this group captain in charge of recruitment has resigned, apparently, because there was a moratorium on white guys joining the Air Force, and they're insisting on people of colour or women, and they said they're putting a hold on recruiting the traditional RAF pilot.
I see.
Male white guys, and only recruiting women and people of colour to try and equal the balance out. It just seems a bad time to be doing that, perhaps.
Yeah, putting so much emphasis on diversity when all these other areas are being...
I'm pretty clumsy at stating these things, so I'm always worrying about who I'm going to offend.
I know. So, well, you have to. Sadly, we have to be careful about it, and
Yeah.
I think people that know us know that we're we are trying to. We believe that the right person for the job is the right person for the job. In other words, the people that are best,
Anyone who
especially
can cut the
if
mustard.
yeah,
The Air
especially
Force
when
is
we're talking
short of
about
pilots.
the
Yeah.
Air Force. I mean, we're talking about the defense of the country, and you want the best out there, whether they're green or blue or with polka dots or not.
Exactly. So the Air Force have set themselves targets, which they are desperate to achieve, yet they can't encourage the right kind of people in. So rather than accept the more traditional type of pilot, they are just saying, well, we're going to be short of them then. And I'm going, well, I don't understand the logic there. So there are a few problems in the RAF's training system right now. And I don't think we're hearing great music from the Royal Air Force publicity people, because they're all just basically seem to be putting their head in the sand. Of course, I no longer have any direct contact with all of these people, so I can't speak for the horse's mouth. But I certainly am concerned about what's happening.
Neil Landworm, in our live audience, if you're spending a long time waiting to progress to your next cockpit, are there issues of currency? Do certain aspects of your training expire?
Well, yes, exactly. That's correct, Neil, because that need to refresh people before they then commence the next stage in training, because they're not consecutive, just adds an additional workload, because if you've then got to put the guys through a small refresher course before you bring them up to get them up to speed to tackle the next flying course, that is an additional number of hours that have to be flown. And some of these refresher courses seem to be pitifully small, which is a worry. In the ideal days, you would go 2 weeks between courses, so you stayed hot and up to date, and you were right. You were there. You didn't need any refreshing, because you had only just come off your previous course. So that was ideal. You could soak it all up and just carry on going. But when you get these huge gaps, it's so easy to forget even the basics that you've been taught, and to try and relearn it all in time to commence the next course is a big problem.
So Liz is asking whether or not it might be a good idea to recruit perhaps former instructor pilots back, like Nicholas Anderson and Nigel Demery.
Yeah, I think no matter how much they scrape the barrel, they won't find us.
Okay. Hey, if you need to find out information about where this Captain Nick is, give me a call. Give me a call. We know. All right. And then finally, in our new segment here, we have this incident involving an Airbus A350-900 Thai Airways at Frankfurt on the January 1st, 2020, about 800 feet AGL, about 7 nautical miles from touchdown.
Yeah, that's a long way out to be that low, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Thai Airways Airbus 350-900 registration, Hotel Sierra Tango Hotel Foxtrot. Yeah. Don't look if you're sensitive. No. Performing flight 926 from Phuket, Thailand to Frankfurt Main, Germany, was on final approach to Frankfurt's runway 7 right when the aircraft descended to about 800 feet above ground, about 1,150 feet MSL, before they initiated a go-around. The aircraft climbed to 5,000 feet MSL, positioned for another approach and landing safely on runway 7 right about 15 minutes later. Germany's BFU reported following the unstable approach and low-level flying, the aircraft went around. The occurrence was rated a serious incident. On the 27th of March, 2020, the BFU reported in their January bulletin that the first officer, 36 years old, ATPL, at about 4,000 hours total, about 1,500 hours on type, was the pilot flying. The captain, 43 years old, an ATPL, about 8,000 hours total, about 400 hours on type, was the pilot monitoring. 2 more first officers, all with airline transport pilot licenses, were present on board. About 4 hours prior to landing, a passenger had become ill. Medical assistance had been requested to meet the aircraft upon arrival in Frankfurt. So I guess there might have been a little sense of urgency to get the airplane on the ground quickly.
Yeah. An
So a
expeditious approach, please.
Time pressure, that's significant. Descending through 7,600 feet towards Frankfurt approach, the feeder instructed the crew to increase the descent, to descend to 3,000 feet, turning to a heading 040 and clear the flight for an ILS approach to 7 right Zulu. The crew was instructed to maintain 170 knots indicated or more. The crew extended flaps to position 1 at about 6,000 feet MSL, 18 seconds to position 2. The gear was lowered at 5,100 feet. The sink rate was about 2,000 feet per minute at the time. The aircraft intercepted the localizer and was following the localizer with increasing sink rate. The automated call 2,500 occurred, and the autopilot was disengaged. The ground proximity warning system sounded 9 seconds later, sink rate 2 times. 5 seconds later, the automated call 1,000 occurred, and the ground proximity warning system sounded glide slope. 34 seconds after the 2,500-foot call, the pilot flying call to go around. The pilot monitoring informed Frankfurt Tower, which was the first radio contact with Tower. At that point, the aircraft was at 668 feet above ground and 6.43 nautical miles before the runway threshold. The aircraft performed a second approach past the 6.43 nautical mile point before the threshold at 2,238 feet.
Yeah, that's more like it.
That was what it should have been. Yeah. So after a shortened final approach, the Airbus A350-941 was flying at night in good visual meteorological conditions, unstabilized on instrument approach to runway 7 right. The glide slope of the instrument landing system was flown through from above. Okay, so they were above, they descended rapidly, and I guess nobody noticed that the glide slope kind of came into view and then continued to go up towards the top of the indication, indicating they were below the glide slope. The cockpit crew aborted the instrument approach and initiated a go-around about, okay, we talked about that, where they did that and how low they were. The investigation determined that errors in the programming of the waypoints in the flight management system, errors in the handling of the autoflight system for the approach, reduced SA, situational awareness of the pilots in regard to their spatial position, and communications and cooperation deficiencies within the flight crew. The BFU rated the pilot in command, the co-pilot, and the 2 additional co-pilots as experienced due to their long aeronautical occupation and high total flying experience. So an experienced crew here. The co-pilot conducted the descent and final approach up into the go-around procedure. The aircraft was flying behind another aircraft during the descent and approach. Therefore, the flight crew assumed for their own flight path planning that they would start their approach to runway 7 right after the preceding aircraft. The flight plan had been entered into the MCDU accordingly. The controller informed that due to the medical status, the approach would be shortened and they would no longer land after. So they were put ahead of the aircraft that they thought they were following.
Was a mistake.
Yep. The controller instructed them to fly north toward the localizer of 7 right. This reduced the remaining distance significantly. The cockpit voice recording showed that the flight crew's stress level increased. The pilot flying's orders were no longer clear and partially formulated as a question. The FCOM chapter initial approach described the flight plan had to be adjusted in the MCDU so that the vertical flight guidance could calculate the correct path and indicated on the primary flight display. It was not possible to reconstruct the pilot's input into the MCDU because the flight data recorder is not designed to record these inputs. A discussion of the pilots regarding a possible route discontinuity in the MCDU could not be heard on the CVR recording. Based on the chronological sequence of the aircraft configuration and the actual flight path, the BFU assumes that the flight plan had not been entered correctly into the MCDU. It's likely that the remaining distance above ground the flight crew had programmed in the MCDU was significantly longer than the actual one. It's very likely that the indication on the primary flight display of the calculated vertical flight path did not correspond with the mental image of the pilots. Presumably, the flight crew had the impression to be much too high above the required flight path. In this phase, the flying experience of the flight crew should have taken effect. Altitude, speed, configuration have to be taken in consideration in order to estimate in which situation they are and then act accordingly. The BFU assessed the situational awareness in this situation as insufficient. In other words, they dorked it up. Based on the flight data, recorder data, it was possible to reconstruct that the pilot flying controlled the descent with open descent procedure. In order to increase the rate of descent at constant high speed, the landing gear was extended, and at times even the speed brakes and the flaps to increase drag. The flaps were used to reduce speed. These were extended to their permissible operating limit. At the flight control unit, initially an altitude of 6,000 feet and then 5,000 was selected. The pilot flying attempted to steer the aircraft in heading select mode onto the localizer. Initially, the localizer was overshot toward the north. With heading entries, the flight path was corrected towards the east. The approach mode had not been activated, however, and therefore the localizer capture mode was not active. About 2,060 feet above mean sea level, the localizer was captured, and the flight management, or the FMA, indicated on the PFD localizer captured. After the aircraft had captured the localizer, with the mode localizer engaged, the mean rate of descent was about minus 2,000 feet per minute, so a 2,000 foot per minute descent. Yeah, that's high, being that low to the ground. Reached a maximum of negative 4,009 feet per minute. Way too fast of a descent.
Absolutely.
The aircraft was flown with high speed at the permissible operating limit of flaps position 2. Okay, so it talks about some of their stabilized approach criteria that, stipulates below 1,000 feet a maximum rate of descent of minus 1,000 feet per minute shall be flown. And I think that's pretty true with most operators that, below 1,000 feet, you don't want to exceed 1,000 feet per minute. And if you do, for whatever the situation, like a special exception situation, it's something that you have to brief, or you have to definitely let everybody know and communicate.
Yeah, you've got to at least acknowledge it.
Exactly. So during the final approach phase, the aircraft was not configured for landing. Speed did not correspond with the landing configuration. The rate of descent was above the limit of 1,000 feet per minute, and the landing checklist had not been completed. Therefore, the approach was not stabilized. So they did the go-around. The flight crew did not explain to the BFU why they had flown so far below the glide slope. It was not possible for the BFU to...
I don't think they'd realised, Jeff.
I don't know. I guess they didn't. They didn't know.
Because they were expecting it to capture, but they'd only captured the localizer, and I don't think they engaged the approach mode, which would have completed the ILS capture and captured the glide path. As they reached it, and they went through it all the way
They didn't
down
notice.
to 600 odd feet, and they don't think they realised.
No.
Until they tweaked, and then it was the only option then was to go around, apart from all the other things that hadn't completed.
Well, let's add some gravy to this. The recorded cockpit communication was mostly held in the Thai language. There were no briefings in regard to the approach route and the instrument approach. These were stipulated in their FCOM. These cockpit voice recorder analysis shows that during descent from cruise level, a relaxed atmosphere prevailed in the cockpit. The first communications problem occurred on the radio frequency of the radar controller about 4 minutes prior to turning onto the extended runway centerline. Radar controller asked about the ill passenger. This communication occurred outside the regular phraseology. The pilot monitoring had problems understanding the content of the questions and asked the controller several times to repeat them. The cockpit voice recording showed that the flight crew's stress level increased continuously. This fact is proven by the instructions of the pilot flying, which were no longer clearly worded. The instructions for the pilot monitoring were partially formulated as questions. So we have a situation here where, especially with people that have native languages that aren't English, you're expecting a lot. I mean, you're relying upon the fact that people are, and that's why we talk about, especially Captain Nick, a lot on the show, that you have to use standard radio phraseology, because situations like this, when English is not your native language, you are expecting, and it's the same is true for us, Nick, when we go fly to other countries and English is not their native language. We're expecting them to give us instructions in a certain way, and sometimes that's really the only way that we know for sure exactly what they're trying to direct us to do, because we know, we're used to, this is the kind of phraseology that's normally used, so that's what they're obviously trying to tell us, because we might have trouble understanding due to their very thick accents. I know that, I don't have a lot of experience myself with this, but I do have a little bit.
Yeah, and then it takes you time and distracts you from what you're trying to do in what was already a very crowded approach, because now you've got to ask for a repeat, and all that just distracts you from your primary duty of flying the airplane, or usually in the case pilot monitoring the airplane and picking up and assisting the pilot flying from making the decisions he needs to get the airplane onto the profile. They were well above it. Interesting, isn't it? Because I've been put in this position myself a few times, and if you say we just have the same situation, got a medical emergency, and the airport want to cut down the track miles, you have to be very careful before you accept that. In other words, take a shortcut, because you're trying to get the airplane on the ground as sensibly early as you can. But that word sensibly is very important, because if you have to do a go-round, you've just added 10 minutes to your flight time. And much better to lose 2 minutes by extending your track and getting rid of that height than it is to lose 10 minutes in a go-round. So that's my first point. If you're not sure you can get down, then don't accept a shortcut. It's just keep on the old one. And they appear to be in the box modifying their track, and this is like the last few turns before you're established onto the ILS, so that they can get their descent profile, because the computer can't work out that you're on the profile unless you're actually going to fly the track you've put in the computer. So where's your mental picture? Why are you modifying a computer and relying on a computer to tell you what your flight profile is, when if you're experienced enough, you ought to be able to look at the map and go, well, the airfield's there, I'm here. That's 15 miles plus a bit for the dog leg it's going to take me to turn on the ILS. Call that 20 miles. I need to be at this height, and I'm way above that. So, that's the mental mass we should all be flying, plus a bit for the extra speed you're carrying, because they're obviously desperate to get this height off, so they're maintaining high speed. It's all becoming very hard. And then when you get this time-compressed approach, because you've now got an awful lot to complete in a very short time, I don't know if they've completed the approach checklist or the rest of the stuff, you're going to start missing a few things, including you're going to fly through the localizer, because you're much faster than you normally, and you need a much bigger anticipation to turn onto the localizer. And then having locked onto the localizer, you mustn't forget to engage the approach mode. Otherwise, the aircraft won't capture the glide slope, and you'll end up doing what you're doing. One of the reasons we had a very specific intercept the glide path from above procedure, which never involved going open descent, because it is a dangerous thing to do. So we would set a rate of descent, and we had a maximum, I think, of 1,500 or 2,000. I can't remember exactly what it probably different for this aircraft.
So a vertical speed mode.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that moderated, and if you couldn't get it with that speed, then the decision is obvious. You go around.
Yep. We tried.
Made it 2 times.
Let's give it another try.
Exactly. And then, of course, they're desperately trying to configure the airplane flaps 1 and even flaps 2 aren't going to do a lot. They put the gear down at $5,000 for heaven's sake. So perhaps you could have put that a bit earlier and use speed brakes and speed to get the airplane down, and then then start slowing once you got down. But trying to slow and descend all at the same time is just a nightmare, because you just can't configure the airplane quickly enough, and you just run out of time.
And the irony of this situation is that had they realized that they were much, much further out than their brains recognized, they would have realized that we don't have to be descending at 4,000 feet per minute at this super high rate of speed. We can put the pitch of the nose of the pitch of the airplane up, slow down, configure.
Yep.
And I talk about that, or this kind of a situation, a lot. Use your pilot brain. Automation is wonderful and it's great and it really is helpful. But sometimes you have to always have to kind of look at what it's presenting and trying to tell you and the way you're understanding it and go, does that make sense? Or no, that doesn't make sense. Why? So would this be a situation, Nick, that might be a good idea to say, you know what, screw the automation, let's turn everything off, and as long as you have your SA and just hand fly the airplane.
That's the problem, Jeff.
That's the problem here. Yeah,
that they were using the automation because it's supposed to relieve you of duties. You get a bit more of your brain back, but only if you're using it appropriately.
Yeah,
and not just trying to make the airplane descend towards the ground and going way too low for an appropriate position. So, yeah, I think they became, and the whole crew, because they've got more than one bloke there, completely task saturated, trying to manage and control this descent, which is way outside their normal procedures. So they're not used to it, and they're not getting all the nice steady cues and nice calm captain that they're used to. It's all turning into a bit of a panic. It's something that could have had much more serious results rather than a go-around.
Yep, absolutely. Neil says, my old mom would say, more haste, less speed. Rushing causes you to make mistakes. I presume they
had spare pilots in the back as well, didn't they? I don't know.
Yeah, I think they mentioned the fact that, and I'm not really sure if they were actually up in the cockpit where you would expect them to be. I don't know if that's a requirement, but I think at most airlines, if you have like
two additional co-pilots. Okay.
Yeah,
that you would. Where they were.
That you would. Right. I think I read somewhere where they kind of seem to have implied that the extra crew members weren't up in the or if they were, they didn't say anything.
Yeah, because they were
aware.
probably in the best place to see that it was all turning into a bag of worms. So, anyway, I mean, to be fair, many of us have been in a similar situation. And it's only been a matter of pride that really kept us pressing on, and then we go, oh, this really has gone wrong. Let's go around and try again. But they went a bit further than most of us would have gone.
Right. The Sultan of Wings, cool name, in our live audience. So why was situational awareness lost? The medical issue? I think indirectly the medical issue was part of the problem, and I think the air traffic controllers giving them priority on the approach and kind of shortening the approach from what they were expecting also helped to lose their SA.
Put them under time pressure, and they had now too much height and speed to be able to cope with that easily, and they let the airplane get ahead of them. I mean, we've always said stay ahead of the airplane. These guys were so far behind, they were
hanging on.
Phuket.
Yeah.
Or they were that place is called.
They were on the tail, just hanging on.
Yeah, they were hanging on for dear life. And, so it's not good. But
no.
These are the sort of incidents that educate us, and it's great that there's nothing worse than a red face or two from this, because these are the sort of things you think yourself, okay, what would I have done in that situation, and how would I have coped? Because I tell you, it's a very easy trap to get into.
And don't be fooled. Just because this was a foreign crew, operating in Germany. Trust me, this happens at all the airlines in the world. Probably
Yes, exactly.
a lot more than you would expect.
Most of the airlines are pretty good at sweeping it under the carpet.
Yeah, they didn't get away with it this time.
No, they didn't.
Yeah. Okay, very good. That was our news segment, and now, of course, it is time for you all to get to know us all. Getting to know us, and it's that time of the show. Just a couple of us here. Pardon me? Oh, Nick Camacho. Wait a minute.
Well done, Nick.
Great
Good
timing,
job.
Nick. Welcome, sir,
Thank
to the show.
Sorry
Hope you're...
for my tardiness.
Oh, that's all right. I hope that your meeting went well.
Yep.
Good. Okay. So we just finished the news segment. Nick, I don't know if you were able to listen to any of it at all, but if you wanted to add anything, you're more than welcome to. Otherwise, we'll just move on to our getting to know us segment.
I just caught the back half of that
Ty?
Frankfurt tie situation. Yeah.
Pretty crazy, huh?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Well, since they're kind of tired of listening to Captain Nick and myself, why don't we hear from you what you have been up to since the last show, Nick Camacho.
Yeah. I haven't been doing a ton of flying. I got to go out a couple of mornings and fly a little Luscombe, just do some local flying. The temperature in my area of the world seems to have maybe finally broken. We had been in like the 97 to 105 degree range basically since the beginning of July. And up through Monday. And the last 3 days, we've been down in like the mid to high 80s. So I'm kind of hoping that is the end of the dog days of summer and we start to get some cooler fall weather.
Yeah, we all do.
Yeah. So yeah, a little bit of flying. Actually been pretty kind of in high gear with my folks' little company. My folks have a little fabrication company where they manufacture a couple of little aviation specific things. And one of the biggest thing that they deal with is a tow bar for vintage airplanes, like Stearmans and T6s and stuff. And the big Stearman Air Show or the big Stearman Fly-In in the United States is one of their bigger events that they go to. And that's happening, starts on Labor Day. And I guess it goes for 6 days. It goes basically all week and into the next weekend. So we've had a big push this last week getting stuff built up and ready for that. And just got a bunch of stuff finished and sent off to the powder coater. So we're in a pretty good place there and hoping to I'm hoping to have enough of a break between my work and other stuff going on to run up there for that. That is in Galesburg, Illinois. And it's a pretty cool little show. They usually have, I think, like 90 to 100 Stearmans.
Wow.
So it's a pretty big show, yeah. And then a couple weeks after that, I started trying to put together some plans to maybe sneak back out to the West Coast and go to the air races in Reno. So I have not got that stuff finalized yet, but I'm kind of hoping that'll work out.
Well, getting back to your folks, we know that they had some damage from that amazing, what was that, a EF4 tornado?
I don't remember what the number
But it was it was an amazing tornado there. I know they had damage from that. How's the repair thing going with the house?
The big push was to get their fence put back up. Of all the things that happened, it's kind of ironic because you think of the fence as being like the most insignificant, but the fence was the first thing that got put back up, and that was really fortunate. That was kind of like the most convenient thing because they had like a little makeshift side yard for their dog. They have a dog that lives in the backyard most of the time.
Uh-huh.
So that was a hassle for him. And then just with all the stuff all the equipment and stuff that lives in the backyard, they were a little antsy about not having the fence. So getting the fence back up was a big deal. We got that up right before Oshkosh, or the contractor got that up right before Oshkosh. And they just this week have started the big primary repairs and construction on the house. So we're hoping it's going to be like a month of, pretty significant construction, and then that'll be behind them.
Yeah. All right. Well, good. So, not sure yet about whether or not you're going to be able to get away and head out to Reno for the air races.
Yep. And if that works out, I think so we're talking about flying the C-47 up there. The C-47 has been invited to be a part of the, I think it's still called the Rolls-Royce Heritage Invitational, but they basically they have the race segment of that event. And then within the race segment, they also have a more traditional air show segment.
Mm-hmm.
So those are like the two active parts. And then on the static side of things, they actually have this Rolls-Royce Heritage Invitational where they invite, a dozen or 15 or 20, I don't know how many. I think about a dozen restored airplanes, not just warbirds, just old airplanes.
Mm-hmm.
And then they judge them, and then they award basically a national champion award for restoration and cool old airplaneness.
Mm-hmm.
So we're flying our airplane up there to be part of that. I don't think there's a lot of expectation for any sort of awards. The only thing that is impressive about our airplane is the originality of it. How much stuff is getting it nearly breaking, and we're able to continue to maintain it and fly it. But yeah.
Well, I hope you get the cool old airplaneness award.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yep. It should be cool. Our chief pilot, who Captain Nick interviewed while they were in England, is actually going to be racing at Reno. He has a long history of racing at Reno. He's won in the T6 class. And then for probably 15 years, he raced an unlimited racer called Checkmate, which is a highly modified Yak 11. And if you're at all familiar with a Yak 11, it's basically like a Russian version of a T6. It's a two-place trainer, low wing, retractable gear. And man, I should have put some pictures in here for this. But they've taken this, what I think is about a 700 horsepower trainer, and they put a R2800 on it, which is like a Bearcat or a Corsair engine, 2,000 horsepower.
Oh
engine.
my Lord!
And they've
Wow.
They've tightened
vast.
Yeah, they've tightened things up, and
You'd need to, particularly
After
an
every
extra
flight.
couple of bolts to keep the wings on.
yeah. And so he's been racing this. He's been racing this Yak for about 15 years, and then they semi-retired it 4 or 5 years ago. It ran well, but it could not keep up with the Super Mustangs that were racing in the mid 2010s. But now all of those Super Mustangs have kind of gone into retirement or are not around. And so they think they have a real chance to win. And so they've kind of taken the airplane out of retirement and are getting it dialed in for Sherman to go out and make another run at it.
That's cool.
That should be pretty exciting.
Yeah. All right. Anything else, Nick Camacho?
I don't think so.
Well, if you think of anything else, you can jump back in.
Yeah.
Okay. Captain Nick, how have you been, sir? I guess all the bowling championship stuff has ended, or are you still involved in some of that?
Not quite.
Oh, okay.
I've got the Harry Mills triples competition tomorrow. the new club I'm at, Bowls at Alton, they've got their finals day, and I'm through to one of the men's singles finals in that, and that's on Saturday. And on Sunday, I'll be playing in the Hanson Burks Cup final with them, which is a big competition. That'll be great. So we've got some good competitions coming up. Next week, an interview for PT UK. I'm speaking to a Harrier pilot who's written a book called 9 Lives. And then with a lot actually of sadness, we'll be heading off. Neville Bounds and I will be heading off to Ivor's funeral on Friday the 26th up on the Welsh border. So that'll be that's kind of next week for me. And this week was really dominated by a visit by a great old friend of mine from the Royal Australian Air Force and now from Qantas. So I've got a picture of his aeroplane up there behind me today, Qantas A380, which he flew over from Australia to Singapore, I think, and then came across to here. And there's Rowie and my lovely wife in the backyard. This is how I remember him. His wine handling wasn't quite as good when he was in the Australian Air Force, but we certainly fed him, if nothing else. We cooked a couple of tomahawk steaks.
Those are huge.
They are absolutely enormous. They're like pieces of dinosaur meat. Fred Flintstone would have coped with that. And there's Gilly's tiny little bit of fillet steak there for her. But we did that, and of course Ray had a great time. It was lovely.
Wow.
So it was super to see him and catch up with old times, and hear about what it's like to get back with Qantas, because he's one of those pilots who hasn't been in full employment for quite a while. He ended up working again for the Australian Air Force for a while he was having a bit of a sabbatical from Qantas because they were laying off a lot of pilots. But now their 380s are getting back into the air. It's great to see them. In fact, I was watching them make approaches into, on flight radar, into Heathrow the other day, and there were, an enormous number of them coming in. Very impressive. So I think we'll be seeing 380 around for still a long time. But it was lovely to see Rowe, and then packed him off back to London. He had a 3-day layover, so it was great. And packed him off back to London before the railway men went back on strike, so that was good. And he flew out a couple of days ago, got a message from him saying he got successfully into Singapore, so that's all fine and good for him, and he'll be heading back to Australia before too long.
Excellent.
And that's really been my week. We drank an awful lot of wine, including some of every Australian with any taste will recognise this, a bottle of Galway Pipe, which Rowie knows is my favourite port, an Australian port, despite the name. So he bought a bottle of that, and that's almost empty. There's just the dregs left in the bottle.
And you just opened it like when we started today's show.
Yeah.
No.
Well, we opened it in our first meal with those steaks,
okay.
and he also gave me a bottle of Penfolds Father. It's a very nice port. The Australians make some great wines, and of course, going along with winemaking, there's port making, and they do some lovely ports. And the Australian Air Force, very good at drinking them. I've never seen a nation more devoted to drinking port. So anyway, we put away a fair bit of a few G&Ts and had a good time. So that was great.
Liz, there are too many comedians in the world already, so I think you should stop trying so hard. She said, not even Portugal?
No.
No.
No, I'm afraid. Yeah, I don't think much of Portuguese port. No, the Aussies make much better port.
Okay. So let's just quickly talk about. Let's talk about me.
Yes, of course.
I had dinner with Miss Tanya in the New York City area. She
Brilliant.
took the PATH train over from Manhattan over to Jersey City on the other side of the Hudson. I had a trip with a double Newark layover, but I didn't get to stay there continuously for 2 nights. I had to actually go fly in between. And I was with my favorite co-pilot, First Officer Brent. And so the three of us went to a nice little Chinese place in Jersey City and had a nice visit with Tanya. And when I was in the pilot lounge on one of those days in Atlanta, somebody walked up to me, a guy named Dan White, and he said, "Captain Jeff, I love what you do. I love all the hard work that Liz does." No, he didn't say that. But anyway, he said he appreciated all the work that all of us do on the show, and that now you'll remember, you might remember him as the gentleman who sent me some stickers, and I'm trying to share something here. Why do I have to open up my computer's security and privacy thing? Oh, I guess this is a somewhat new computer, and I guess I've never attempted to share my screen. Hang on. This will just take a moment. No, I can't do that. It wants me to quit Google Chrome. That's not going to be a good idea. All right. So what I'll do is in the show notes, it's called Cockpit Creations, his company, where he makes the stickers and other items such as coffee mugs and certain things like that. He said his new venture is something he calls Aviation Heritage Spirits. That's AV-ALC, AVALC, Aviator Fuel. And on the website here, he says, from the early days of powered flight, there has been avgas, the fuel for piston engine aircraft, and then came avtur, T-U-R, the fuel for turbine engine aircraft. While contemplating this, it soon became apparent to us that this was an unfair situation and that we as aviators and aviation enthusiasts should all also have a fuel of our own. So we set out to correct this injustice. And we are pleased to say that there now exists a third type of aviation fuel, AV-ALC, Aviator Fuel for the People of Aviation. Yay! And the website has a couple of different places you can go. You can go to the USA version of the website, the UK version. And basically, how do I describe this? You'll have to look at the website, but they are kind of teaming up with people and these special so they offer a wide range of high-quality liquors from various independent distilleries, bottled and brought to market in specially designed and molded bottles fitted with our unique patented labels. I wish I could show you the picture here, but again, just check it out in the show notes and the website, and you can see some of these beautiful creations. Our Mark II glass bottles were specially designed and are custom molded to be fitted with our AVALC labels, aircraft skin type metal, wood, and or composite labels, complete with rivets, hinges, and some other bits of hardware. Yes, this is the bottle of alcohol we're talking about. Each bottle is individually hand-labeled with the label effectively being built onto the bottle. These custom-designed labels allow us to create bespoke bottle labels that feature specific information, details, and or artwork. In this way, we can then create labels to celebrate, commemorate, and pay tribute to significant historical events, famous aviators, and iconic aircraft. And just on the U.S. version, they have the Red Tail P-51D Little Coquette straight bourbon whiskey, and it's quite a presentation of the bottle and the case in which it comes. Also a Curtis P-40 Shark Mouth Texas straight bourbon whiskey. Yeah, the Sultan of Wings is saying, and the APG discount code is, I don't know, maybe maybe we can work some kind of a discount from Dan. He's interested in possibly working with us in some way. So I'm sure we might be able to. Yeah, we can be his official tasters. Oh, that's a good idea, Liz. I like that. I like the way you think. Anyway, it's an interesting concept, and these are not this is not your everyday, sipping bourbon, sipping whiskey. These are for special occasions because unless you're extremely rich, and then maybe this is your daily thing. Because these things are, there's more than just the really, really nice alcohol contained within these bottles, but it's that and the beautiful bottles themselves with the beautiful labels and it's a very, the presentation is just amazing. And the other thing he mentioned, and I'm not sure, sorry, Dan, we were in the pilot lounge and I only remember most of what we discussed, but there was some talk of this company. I think he has some kind of connection with it, and it's an English company called Aerocraft Panels, AERO craftpanels.com. And let's see, born from a lifetime of enthusiasm and passion for aviation, our unique wall art Aerocraft panels bring the essence of aviation home. And basically, these are panels made to look like like pieces of airplanes, like a Spitfire or a whatever. But they're bars. You can mount these things on your wall and then kind of crank the side of the panel outward, and it's just a really, really. Do they make one that would fit in an RV? I guess if I ended up getting a very large Class A diesel pusher, I could probably fit one in there, Liz. But
I see. It's like a piece of fuselage, and you lift up the side of the fuselage, and there are a load of optics behind.
Yes.
Very nice.
I see. You went to the site there, so
yeah, I'm there looking at them.
Isn't that something?
Yeah,
pretty nice.
It's great. Clever LED lighting, nice RAF Randall on it.
Mm-hmm. Their workshops is situated in the North Pennines. Okay,
yeah, Pennines,
which is an area
of
outstanding natural beauty in the north of England. And anyway, so again, I'll have that.
The orcs live.
Oh, okay.
All the orcs live up there. Yeah.
Gotcha.
And the goblins. You've got
goblins. Okay. Is it safe?
No.
No. Okay. Well, then probably best to just go to the website, order it, and have it delivered. You don't want to go up there.
Have it delivered and make sure the driver stays in his van.
All right. So anyway, we'll have that link in the show notes for you all to check out. So, all right, cover art time. It looks like episode 532 was another hit, a hit on the head. Bowing on the Head is the name of the title of the show. And there are, I don't know where you found all these crazy hats that I don't think any of us have actually worn. But in the picture, it appears that we are. And, of course, they're all Boeings, of course, except, Nick's hat is not a Boeing airplane, but it does say Boeing on it, I believe. And then Steph's particular hat's like a beanie hat, I guess you'd call that, right? A propeller hat, propeller beanie. But anyway, very clever. Liz does not look to be happy in the least about being with us with all our stupid hats in this picture.
That's her and her happy face, I think.
Oh, is it?
I've seen happy face.
I've seen her happy face, and I don't recognize that as such.
Oh.
I've seen her face when she's irritated. I see that a lot.
Is that right?
Yeah.
She looks like she is gritting her teeth a little bit, but
yeah,
I think she was enjoying herself at the time.
Oh, that was at Nick's retirement luncheon, she said. That's why she looks like she's in pain.
Oh, you reckon? I don't think it was my retirement luncheon.
I don't know. You guys can argue about it, I guess, after the show. Anyway, so that was our artwork for thank you, Captain Nick, for doing
you're
that as
welcome.
always.
Actually, the other suggestion would probably have been easier, but there you go. I had my heart set on that one.
And we're not even going to talk about what the other suggestion is because I don't want to embarrass you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay, and now, of course, it's time for the Coffee Fund. Your way
how much more coffee? No thanks.
to support the show financially. And a couple different ways to do that. One is the OG method, the Coffee Fund Classic method. And since the last show, we have a one-time donation from, although he has donated several times, but it's not a recurring donation. Mazus Karim, whom we saw in England, in the Brooklands for the PTUK 400 episode celebration. Thank you, Mazus, for again contributing to the show. And we have several other recurring contributors using that particular method. And then the other way to contribute is via Patreon. You can become a patron of the show via Patreon. And we have a new producer, Miklos, sends in or signs up to be a patron of the show. And we have two people who were producer level and decided to bump it up a couple of steps to assistant senior executive producers, Sierra Mike Kilo and Robert Mac Coble II. So thank you very much for upping your standards, and we think that all of you should up yours. And I always, any opportunity I have to do that little stupid joke, I take advantage of. Anyway, so thank you very much for becoming patrons and increasing your patronage. And if you're interested, and we have several people who are patrons and send in their recurring donations every episode, every month. Thank you so much. We do appreciate it. If you want to learn more how you can become part of this great group of folks who support the show, please head over to airlinepilotguy.com/coffee. You'll be glad you did, and we will too, for sure.
Captain, incoming message.
Okay. All right, we're going to go to feedback 6 while we have Captain Nick here with us, and this was sent in. By the way, we're trying to catch up with feedback. Although I thought we were just going to do a couple of news items, and I know there was a lot of good news going on, so sorry about that. We were going to do kind of almost like a feedback extra. Maybe we need to do that at some point. But anyway, we have a lot of feedback that was sent in that is a while back. And we're getting to it. We'll blame it on Oshkosh and my lack of resourcefulness or something. I don't know. Anyway, Peter sent this in. He said, "Hi, Captain Jeff. Thought Captain Nick might enjoy this mock loop video. There are a couple of passes by RAF Tornadoes. Not sure if he ever flew that aircraft. Yes, he did. And he's talked about it a few times. But thought he'd enjoy it just the same. And so now I'm going to have to scramble to load up that video so that we can all watch it together. And shouldn't take me too long here. Open. And let's see, I'm going to add that to the stream. Is it this one? Yeah. Okay. The last tornado through the mock loop, Royal Saudi Air Force, Tornado GR4. Ooh, listen. That looks pretty fast, Captain Nick.
It does go quite fast.
Yeah.
But that's about all it does do. And actually, the GR4, I didn't fly that variant. I flew the F3. That was an Eagle, a Strike Eagle by the looks of it, was it?
Yep, it was.
Here's a pair of somethings. Oh, more Eagles.
Yeah, I think more Eagles here.
Looking a bit sedate, if you don't mind me saying.
Yeah. Look at at least they're down nice and low.
They are nice and low, and doing some nice hard maneuvering as well.
This is a great video, by the way. For those of you not watching the video of the show, please make sure that you check out the show notes, and you'll be able to see. That one looks like it's just standing still. That one too, because there were still pictures. Here's the F-16 Falcon. I thought it was the F-16s that looked like they were a lot higher than everybody else making these passes.
Perhaps there's some more.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, he's climbing up. Now you have to look up.
Oh,
What?
no, that's not
Come
good.
on. Get down in there.
The Sam Sights just spotted you. His wingman's doing a good job.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, there used to be a rule, never go below your leader, but apparently not.
Those rules do not apply anymore, apparently. I guess. Let's see.
Yeah, this bloke's a bit tame, isn't he?
Yeah. Some more Vipers. So I'm going to. Oh, look at this. This I thought was pretty impressive.
The Herc, yeah.
Yeah.
He's doing a good job down there.
He's making the F-16 guys look kind of bad, I think. I mean, it's not going as fast, of course, but
He's way down in the valley.
yeah, way down there. In fact, I think at some point in this video,
He's cracking on a good 60, 70 degrees of bank.
see the position of the photographers. They're pointing down to see the top of this 130. He's very low.
Excellent. And there's his wingman.
Yeah.
I love it. You can see what a great spot it is because you can get onto the rocks on the top of the ridge and look down into the middle of the valley. And they're RAF boys. Well done, chaps.
Yeah. Nice job. I'm trying to remember exactly the sequence of things here. I think one of them I wanted to point out was an airplane that you flew in addition to the Tornado. It was.
We've got a Hornet, haven't we?
No, I don't know if they had any Hornets in here, but this one right here.
Hawk.
Yeah.
There's a little fella. Look at the little Hawk. That's the new Hawk. That's not the old T1 that I flew.
Okay.
That's the new variant of trainer,
Okay.
so they're brand new ones.
I see. Okay.
Ours didn't have weapons on, whereas that one's capable of carrying weapons.
I see. Okay.
But it's a lovely little manoeuvring. It manoeuvres beautifully. It's perfect for this kind of flying.
All right. Well, we're not going to play the entire video. You'll have to go and seek it out yourself again in the show notes. But that
was great. Anyway, thanks, Peter.
Yeah, that was nice of Peter to send that in. Here, I need to remove that from the screen, and do appreciate that.
And that, as I was saying, that Tornado was a mud mover, not a air defense variant. But it looked okay, didn't it?
Yeah.
Wing 45, loads of tanks hanging off it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You have such a fondness for that airplane.
That Tornado, yeah, I know. It was a fine airplane to finish my career on.
Okay. All right. And that's what it did. It finished his career.
Yes, it did.
All right. Let's continue with Liz just mentioned that we have a little under 10 minutes remaining, so we'll try to pop out a couple more here. We got some feedback from Tom T. And regarding, I guess we were talking about Spirit Flight 3044, where they had an evacuation on the ground, and of course, the typical everybody grabbing their personal effects and leaving the airplane with them instead of leaving them in the airplane. He said, cutting to the chase, cabin video of passengers emptying overhead bins. What will it take to have those bins locked after the cabin is secured? 100 people burned to death? What's the safety issue with locked overheads? So darn infuriating. What say you, captains? And the article that he sent a link to talked about the experts from the Royal Aeronautical Society in England have published a study, this is back in 2018, which recommended that Regulators study whether locking overhead bins might discourage passengers from delaying evacuations by stopping to get their bags, endangering other passengers in the process. It's a serious concern. There have been a number of recorded accidents during which passengers have ignored crew instructions, like everyone, I think, and obvious danger from intense fire and prioritized their possessions over their lives. So it goes through and let's see, I highlighted a couple of things in this article. The risk in this scenario is that something that might be critical to a passenger's survivability gets locked away. Okay, so that's one of the negatives about locking bins. During aircraft evacuations, every second that passes can result in a greater risk of injury or death. During evacuations, the cabin crew are first focused on getting passengers out quickly. A delay among the crew in opening a secondary manual lock to pull a life raft, an oxygen mask, or a smoke hood out could prove as dangerous as passenger baggage delays. There is also concern that passengers may delay evacuations by trying to force the locked overhead bins open instead of getting out of the aircraft quickly. The authors of the study acknowledge that locking overhead bins may not be a perfect solution for this irrational passenger behavior. Still, the aviation industry will need to find a solution before passenger actions lead to loss of life. So I see good points or good arguments for and against this whole thing. What do you think, Captain Nick?
I read the report with interest, and they don't try and come up with the answer. They're just offering solutions, and they say it's really it's up to the agencies, the safety agencies, to come up with it. I don't agree that an excuse to lock it would, or not to lock it, would be that safety equipment's in there. You just need to allocate some lockers purely for safety equipment and leave them unlocked. So passengers can't put their own luggage in there, and they always remain unlocked for the cabin crew. Whereas, perhaps automatic locking on the passenger ones would. I think you've got to do more than lock it. You've got to have electronic signs, say, on the front of the bins saying, bin locked, evacuate immediately. Something that's going to encourage people to leave the damn thing alone and get out. The ultimate, of course, would be to have no hand luggage in the cabin.
Yeah, right.
That's the safest way. But, of course, people want to put expensive things into their hand luggage and they want to keep it with them, which is one of the prime reasons why they want to grab it when they get off the aircraft. So, that's a bit of a self-defeating thing unless you make the hold incredibly safe. In the past, the reason people put their expensive things in their hand luggage is that there are so many thefts from hold luggage. So you'd have to cure that entire problem and convince all the passengers that that's not. One way might be, we used to have smoking on airplanes, and we've got rid of that almost by the only way we've managed to do that is by making it against the law. So if in the same way you say, in an emergency, if we evacuate, and you try and bring your luggage, you will be prosecuted to the full extent of the law, and you will become a criminal, etc., etc. And that might, in time, induce people to leave their luggage on board. But the people just have to understand that seconds count. And the regulators work so hard to make sure that you can get out of an aircraft within the very small time window before the place turns into an inferno. And if it only needs a few passengers with a damn great carry-on to block the aisles or damage the slides, because they're not. They're not invincible. They're quite easily damaged. They're nice and firm when they're full of air, but you puncture a hole in them, they're going to wither, and you're going to end up falling 50 feet from the cabin door instead of sliding down a nice slide. People need to be well educated, and they need to think more about others rather than just themselves and their laptops.
Yep, I agree. Camacho, what do you think?
Yeah, most all of the same comments. I don't think. I think that trying to legislate it would be challenging, because people would always say it's a state of mind thing. It's one thing if you're sitting in a completely calm airplane and you try to strike up your cigarette and they're like, oh, you can't do that. I think it'd be much more challenging to try to, in this like super crazy environment where everybody's already losing their minds and not thinking rationally because they're trying to take their luggage with them. Man, at least where we live in the United States, I would be a little concerned that the court system would not be able to adequately adjudicate that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, as a well-known CRJ disrespecter, I hate luggage that is carried on and put in the overhead bins.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder, like I think I've mentioned it probably multiple times on the show, but it just seems like it would solve so many issues if we basically reversed how we did things, right? You had to pay to use that space in the overhead bin and they let you put stuff in the cargo hold for free.
Mm-hmm.
That wouldn't completely solve this issue, but I wonder how it would impact it.
Right.
If people, obviously you're never going to get rid of luggage in the cabin of the airplane. And there's always going to be, women have to have their purses. Men and women are going to have personal items, whether it's medication or glasses or whatever. But
laptop computers and stuff that you want to have with you to do work on a longer flight.
Exactly. But it's just getting over that mindset of I don't know what it would take. Like, half the problem is 90% of every evacuation that you ever see on social media now, the airplane is burning to a crisp and there's smoke billowing out everywhere. And you see all these people nonchalantly wandering off the airplane with their luggage, and it's almost, every time I see that, I'm almost like, oh, man, there's another negative reinforcement to somebody else who's like, oh, hey, look,
Mm-hmm.
that person survived this horrible situation.
And they had their luggage.
Yeah, I'll keep that in mind next time I have it. So
yeah.
It worries me as a person who flies. I'm generally I don't know. I consider myself a risk-averse person. Being a GA pilot, that's probably an oxymoron. But I do try to think through things, scenarios, and so I try to do basic things that would assist me in abnormal situations in the airplane. I always wear shoes. I don't wear flip-flops. I generally just in life try to wear clothes that won't like melt to my body, and I do all these little things. And then I think about the fact that like I try to be prepared for these scenarios, and it just takes one person who is like trying to get their roller bag that's wedged into the overhead that's between me and the emergency exit. It only takes one of those people for all of that to be irrelevant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. At least one of the good things about the 200 series of the CRJ is that those darn bins are so teeny tiny.
They're so small.
There's no way that people can put their big rollerboards up there because they will not fit. That at least it's just hand luggage, literally, lightweight stuff. I mean, it doesn't solve the situation completely, but I'm wondering also what's the fear that people have in checking their luggage? Well, I guess it's not going to make, especially if they have a connecting flight, is it going to make the transfer? Is it going to actually show up at the baggage claim at my destination? Or theft, as Liz just mentioned, that people are afraid that if you have something valuable in your bag, that the thieves are going to somehow find it, and then your bag is going to show up and your expensive item is not there. What about a situation where you could go just prior to boarding an aircraft and putting almost like a lockable locker system where you only have the key to it, and then somehow this thing goes into a part of the airplane that you have no access to during the flight? I don't know if they've thought about that or
That's
not.
a good idea. You could, file everyone past a cargo container that had lockable compartments, and you've got one allocated to your seat. You put it in there, lock the front of the container. No one gets it because it goes straight on the airplane, and as soon as you land, it's the first thing off.
Right.
And as you come off the airplane, you go to your locker, and there's your kit.
Right. And then if you're in emergency evacuation, obviously that thing is not going to be available to you to put your key in or whatever, to.
That's exactly
And fireproof,
right.
as Liz is saying, make it fireproof and,
or have it ejectable with a parachute so that it comes.
Now we're going to get really crazy. Oh boy. We're really.
Yeah. It's too bad Steph isn't on here, right? Because she's like the carry-on queen.
Oh, certainly
traveling.
she is.
Yeah.
My attitude is, I'm kind of with you, Jeff. I carry my laptop with me, and it's not even as much that I am worried about losing it for the financial value. It's just the giant hassle to my life, right? If I lost it and everything on it.
Exactly.
But outside of that, I try to check everything. And right now I have the lowest level of United frequent flyer. And the only reason that means anything to me is because I can check a bag for free. So I don't even have to think about it. But even when I couldn't, I would still pay $30 to not have to haul all my stuff through the airport. So yeah, I would be curious if it's just the fear of theft or losing it. Neville recently had an incident where he lost maybe all of his luggage. Was it him and his wife traveling and he lost all of his luggage?
Yes.
Which sucks. But then when you look at, I don't know, and I think he said that's the first time that ever happened. And if you look at how often he travels, it's actually pretty good. When you're talking about multiple flights, I think per week, maybe for most of his life, that's really a pretty good ratio of success.
It is.
Could always be better, but
yeah. Liz is kind of warning Nev when he travels with Nick next week. Just keep a good eye on your personal belongings because just saying.
This is a bloke who drives a Ford. He's got nothing I want.
Wow. Okay. Well, on that note, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. The control room is telling us we have to wrap up the show, at least part one of our show, and then magically, in just mere seconds, you're going to hear the voice of Dr. Steph and whoever else managed to show up for part two, and we look forward to that. And yeah, so why don't you guys, we'll do like a pretend ending of the show. So wishing you all clear skies, unlimited visibility, and tailwinds. Take care, and God bless.
Bye, everybody.
See you next time.
So now I have that on tape, so I can put that in at the
everybody.
end of the show.
Oh,
Hey.
you forgot Liz. Oh, she can do one.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you can do it tomorrow.
Yeah.
Oh, she just
For real.
Well, pop back in because we're finished. Let me turn off the
Recorders.
Skype.
Yep.
That worked out pretty well, I think, right?
Yeah, no, it's good. Yeah,
Oh, you just ended the call.
I did.
All right. Thank you.
Well done,
Wasn't sure how
gents.
long. Thank you. Thank you
was
for
good.
all your. So nice for you to be back behind the scenes and
I missed
giving
it too.
direction. Yeah. So anyway, here.
Thanks
let me turn
everybody
off.
in the chat room.
Yeah, thank you.
Some of you tomorrow.
I don't know why I
Same
keep
time,
looking
same
up.
place. Same
Keep looking
back
up at my
channel.
light like this. The camera. The camera's right here, not there.
Any good title options that I missed in the news
Well,
section?
the only ones that occurred to me were just hanging on, and you got the guys so far behind the aircraft that they're like
behind the
hanging
airplane.
hanging on
Oh,
to the
yeah.
tail. So I don't know.
That might be interesting artwork. Yeah, like a rope hanging onto the tail of a
Yeah, the plane got so far ahead of them,
Airliner?
they're just hanging on.
yeah.
whatever, just a concept.
Yeah,
That's all
I like
have.
that. Concept art. Anybody else have
Aaron.
any? Let's see.
There was. I was trying to think of something to do with Phuket, but
Oh, Phuket.
And an alternative spelling?
Oh, Phuket.
yes. But I don't know how I'd do that and keep it clean.
Yeah. That would probably be difficult.
Yeah. Okay,
I
I'm
feel
going
like
to
we
end the
just have-
broadcast.
All right.
Okay.
Sorry.
Got places to go, huh?
No, I just want to chat with you guys before.
Okay. All right. You know, and we'll have an opportunity to possibly have more titles for during
Yeah, they
part 2
usually
tomorrow.
come out of the feedback, I think. But anyway, we'll try tomorrow.
Yeah, that's true. And it's usually because it's whatever one of the last things we talked about is the only thing that we can remember.
Called recency bias.
Recency bias. Okay. I like it. Okay. Well, I guess now our director is telling us to end the broadcast, so we're going to do that right now. So here we go. See you, everybody. Hopefully you'll be able to join us tomorrow as well.
Yeah, if I get back
Bye.
from bowling
Bye.
early enough, I'll be on.